7:43, welcome back to Acadiana's Morning News as we near the November 8th election. Bernie and I started a little bit earlier this week our 5-question series where we're inviting as many candidates as we can to be on so you can hear directly from them before you go to the polls on November 8th. Joining us this morning, running in the 3rd Congressional District, Brett Geymann. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, we can't complain. The sun is shining. There's no rain.
Beautiful.
I might even be convinced to cut the grass this afternoon. Feels so good.
Wait now. Before we start, so I hear you have a 5-question series that you're asking all the candidates. So, did you email those questions out ahead of time?
Nope, questions were not emailed.
Yeah. Can I have a redo tomorrow and you go ahead and send the questions out ahead? How's that work? Hey, isn't that what they do on CNN and some of those other things with the presidential debates?
Some of them do it. We'll say some of them, Brett.
Hey, I'm sorry. Good morning to y'all anyway.
Good morning.
Not here. So, Brett, let's go ahead and just start. Obviously, Congressman Dr. Charles Boustany holds the seat now. What do you think you would do differently in the role if you were to be elected?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I don't know that I have anything specifically differently that I would want to talk about from Dr. Boustany, but what I would like to talk about is what I will do and let the voters decide how that would be different. And I will take a stand on the issues that are tough. And the thing about the country today is we need people who are going to make those tough decisions. We know that we have a lot of problems. We hear that throughout the district. I have a proven record, served 12 years in the legislature, and I've taken those tough stands. We've got to deal with the budget issue and the national debt. We've got to deal with Social Security, making it solvent so that we have a future for our children in that area as well. We have immigration issues. We have education issues, and the list goes on and on and on. And I think that what we have to have is people who are going to do the right thing at whatever cost, even if it means that you get political consequences from that. You lose a committee assignment, you lose a project in your district, because all those things are going to happen. You're going to be threatened with loss of something for you if you don't vote a certain way by people who are in power. And it takes a lot of courage to take that stand. It takes a lot of courage to do the right thing. But I think we're at a time in our country where we have to put the country first over ourselves. And it may mean that we have to have some consequences from that.
So with the oil industry, obviously in the situation where it is, a lot of folks in Acadiana really facing some tough times, just looking at layoffs and other things. How will you work to help restore these jobs and the industry as a whole in the state?
Well, look, let me just say this for starters. I've spent my whole entire adult life in the oil and gas industry. I work at the supply side of the oil and gas industry alongside my father, who has a small business and a small family-owned business that supplies the oil and gas industry. So I've worked with him through the gas lines of the late 1970s, the oil bust of the 1980s, and all the different cycles that we've gone through over the decades, including the one we're in now, where people are hanging on by a thread, and a lot of people that I've seen in the business for decades are now closed, and some more will be closing. People lost their jobs, as you said. So I understand that issue as well as anybody. And I know that it's a difficult issue, and I know it's something that we have to solve. And of course, the Iran deal and the regulations and the lack of the opportunities that the current administration is giving us, for instance, the Keystone Pipeline and other things that we can be doing to help the industry are things that we're going to have to try to change.
All right, so let's say your first month in office. What would it look like for you? What would be the first thing that you would want to concentrate on?
Well, I think the first thing we would do, based on my experience from serving in the legislature, is we would put together a staff that represents and reflects the values that I bring to the table. We're running a campaign and based on Christian values, and we're trying to be very positive in what we do and speak to the people about what we believe and not attack and go after other people. So the first thing I would do is try to surround myself with people who reflect that. And who would be willing to work and do a good job on the staff. The second thing, of course, would be I would try to find committee assignments that would be areas of my interest: the budget, education, natural resources, things that I've done in the legislature that I have some experience in, and I would try to get on those committees if possible and get situated in that area as well. And then the third thing I would do is just get educated on where we're going to be going and under whatever administration we're serving under, and and try to understand the agenda that's coming forward and begin to build my relationships with my colleagues. And it's something that I did in the legislature. Even though I took on those tough issues, I was named Gentleman of the House by my colleagues, and the ability that I have to build those relationships and find like-minded colleagues and work with them and build those alliances. And I was a leader of a group called the Fiscal Hawks that fought for budget reform and for, to try to turn away from the fiscal irresponsibility that we've had in the state. I would do the same thing in Washington as well.
As a state that's had its own issues with race, how do you think race and race relations will play a role in executing this office? On the phone again with Brett Geymann.
I'm sorry, I cut out there at the last second of that. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, no, just as a state that has its own issues with race, how do you think race and race relations will play a role in how you execute this office?
Well, I think the first thing you have to have on that topic is you have to have leadership. You have to lead by example, and look, I do a lot. I share my faith everywhere I go, and I think, and I'm no better than anyone else. I'm not suggesting that. It's an important part of my life, and it's what drives me. And it's what guides me when I make my decisions. I'm not always right, but I certainly try to be right, and I get that wisdom and that guidance. I seek that from God, and I try to be that person. And I think the first thing we have to do is rely on that. If you are a Christian and you do believe in that lifestyle, then you certainly don't have a hateful heart. And so I think you lead by example and you reach out, and again, you try to build those alliances. And I think that's the important part, is that we have to have that leadership that doesn't divide us but brings us together.
As we wrap up with candidate for the 3rd Congressional District seat, Brett Geymann. Brett, what is your biggest flaw?
I'm glad.
Everybody loves that question.
Hey, wait, I wish you'd have sent those questions ahead of time now that I got that one. I want to let my wife answer that one for me. How about that? Hey, I know what she would say. She would tell you that I'm hard-headed. And I certainly am. People call me stubborn and hard-headed. I like to say I'm principled. And so sometimes that gets in the way of social relationships and business decisions and things like that. But I also think it brings a quality, about me that when I make my mind up on something and I believe that I'm right, and I believe that I'm doing the right thing, I am determined to get to the finish line on that. And as I fought Common Core and fought the budget issues in my time in the legislature, when we started out, we were a very small minority of people doing that, but I was determined and I was hard-headed enough to take on the interest groups and people that I normally might have aligned with, people in my own party, because I was determined that I was doing the right thing. So I guess I'd say I'm hard-headed.
All right, we've been joined.
Very forthcoming. That was nice.
By Brett Geymann, candidate for the 3rd Congressional District seat, currently held by Dr. Charles Bustani. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, and thanks for doing what you're doing to educate the voters. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, sir.
7:51 coming up. Details on the Insane Inflatables 5K, how you could be involved, and go take a run for it yourself.
I love
coming
that.
up on the show.